Hi everyone, welcome back to another Disney Lorcana video, and you're probably wondering what you can do to pass the time between your local game shop's league ending and the release of Archazia's Island Lorcana's 7th set. Well, how about a theme night where you can play just whatever franchise you want and basically run all these crazy color combinations and have some fun with it? That is what we did at our local game shop for a 2-week gap between league ending and Archazia's Island release. So in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we organized that theme night at our local game shop, and we'll talk about some decks that I'm potentially running, which we see one here, but we'll talk a little bit about the specifics of the rules, how we got our game shop involved, and maybe some questions around what franchises you could potentially run. Now, some of you might be looking to just host a theme night at your house or at a friend's house or what have you. You might be playing with friends and family, and you might be curious about what rules we use to help conjure our decks. So we'll be talking about that a little bit later in the video. Be sure to use the chapters in this YouTube video to help you jump along, but we actually got our local game shop involved in helping us create this event. So I'll talk briefly about how our local game shop came into play a role in this event, and then we'll talk about the deck restrictions and whatnot. So we actually approached our local game shop about this idea about the time round 3 was beginning for Lorcana League. For those who are unfamiliar, at local game shops, authorized retailers, Lorcana League is organized play, and there are 3 rounds of 4-week intervals. So you have 4 weeks being round 1, the next 4 weeks being round 2, and then the final 4 weeks being round 3. So we approached them about this idea about the time round 3 was beginning. We've had a lot of new players in our community, a lot of returning players to the community, and we were looking for something to help fill the gap between league ending and Archazia's Island release. So just with the way that set championships happened at that store, we actually had a 2-week gap before the release of Archazia's Island. So this event took place after League had finished. All the prizes had been distributed, all the raffles had taken place, League was done, and we had a 2-week gap. And we wanted to kind of do this to help fill that 2-week gap. And shout out to our local game shop that we frequent, because they were just awesome. They were in on the idea, and they actually created a Melee event for this event. So rather than it just being like, a regular Lorcana event, it says theme night in Melee. So that's super awesome. So thank you to our local shop for helping us make this event possible. But now you're probably wondering about the specific restrictions that we used for the themed night decks. So the deck restrictions are fairly straightforward. A 60 card deck minimum, like normal. No more than 4 count of a specific card, like normal, unless that card specifies otherwise, like Dalmatian Puppy, I believe Microbot, is one of those. So unless the card says that you can have up to 99 puppies or any number of Microbots inside your deck, then you're good. The important part is that we did not restrict players to 2 ink restrictions. You could use all the colors inside your deck for as long as they all came from the same Disney franchise. So that kind of brings me to our franchise restrictions. So all cards inside the deck had to be from the same Disney franchise. That included, for example, that would be no Cinderella characters inside a Moana deck. That would be no Beauty and the Beast characters inside a Encanto deck, and so on. And that restriction applied to all character cards, locations, songs, action, and items. They all had to come from the same franchise. The exclusion to this was Lorcana IP cards. So cards like Sail the Azurite Sea and Fortisphere, those aren't necessarily tied with a Disney franchise. Those are part of just, original Lorcana IP, part of the Lorcana universe. And we were like, we'll include those inside our decks. So if you're looking to add something like Fortisphere or Ruby Chromacon, etc. inside your deck, you're good to do so. So if it came from any sort of Lorcana original IP, that is good to go inside your theme deck. But naturally, this creates a lot of questions around maybe specific franchises and specific characters. So one of these was around Jungle Book, for example. Now, we just got a handful of questions from our player base, and we're not going to be able to answer every question on how we handle certain franchises. So leave a comment down below if you have a specific question, and we'll give our 2 cents on how we handled this. But one of this was around the Jungle Book, for example. Can Jungle Book cards be considered for a Talespin deck? So we tackled this as, yes, Shere Kong, King Louie, and Baloo are all part of Talespin, but Bare Necessities is excluded because doesn't really have an appearance in Talespin. And also Ka has never been part of Talespin, so Hypnotize, the card, the Emerald card, could not be used inside your Talespin deck. Now, another one we got from our player base and our community was around Mickey Mouse specifically. We got the question that somebody was building a Fantasia or Broom deck. Could they include any Mickey Mouse card? And the way we tackled this is we identified Mickey Mouse as the character. And things like Sorcerer's Apprentice or Friendly Face were sub-names. So any character named Mickey Mouse, no matter the sub-name, could be included inside your deck as long as they make an appearance in the franchise that you are building your deck around. So you could include Mickey Mouse Friendly Face inside your Fantasia Broom deck. So that is how we tackled Mickey Mouse specifically. So now let's jump into some deck lists about what I'm potentially running at this event. And it's great because whenever the shackles are off and you have free reign to all the ink color combinations, you can really start to make some really fun combinations. So some players ended up adding those Lorcana IP cards to their deck. Some people kind of kept it pure in a sense, as in like just purely Lion King, Encanto, what have you. So this is actually the first one that I kind of came up with, was an Encanto themed deck night. And it's really interesting because you have to kind of change your playstyle a little bit. You know, you may not have all the 1-drops in the world inside your particular franchise. So kind of just looking at this themed deck I put together here, it consists of, it looks like 3 ink colors, so Amber, Amethyst, and Steel. 1-drop only being a total of 8 here. You have Augustin Madrigal, a 2/2 1-drop. And then you also have the Casita Madrigal that I added here. So at the start of your turn, if you have a character here, you gain 1 more. So a total of 8 1-drops, and that's kind of it here. Moving on to the 2-drops, we have things like Maribel with support. We have things like the Miracle Candle, which is part of the Encanto franchise. So a little bit of healing taking place and also gaining lore as well. Into the 3-drops, we got Alma Madrigal, which allows me to search for a Madrigal character. So it's not the top 5, it just allows me to search for any Madrigal and put it into my deck and shuffle it. And actually, let's see here, shuffle your deck, put that card on top of it. So close, it's not my Merlin, but it's close. We got Antonio Madrigal, we got Luisa, which has +2 if another character is in play. You got Camilo Madrigal, which is a really fun card actually, because at the start of your turn, you have to either give this character +1 lore questing for 2 or gaining challenge or 2. So quite a fun decision you have to make at the beginning of your turn. Dolores, which gives me a little bit of card draw, which if a character is exerted, you may draw a card whenever this character is played. Luisa, just for a rush, uninkable, but hits for 4 strength. Maribel, this being one of my favorite cards actually that I never get to play with, where if you have 5 or more characters in play, you get to quest for 5. You can't play her without having 5 characters in play. So I don't know if this is going to pull off, but it's an option. And then we get to things like, you know, support and other Madrigal characters getting +1 with this Maribel. You have the Bruno, which is whenever you play this character, chosen character gets the ability to be bounced back to your hand if they are banished in a challenge, which is pretty cool. Peppa Madrigal, whenever you play this character, you can exert chosen opposing character. They cannot ready at the start of their next turn unless they're at a location. Camilo Madrigal, the legendary that we have from Shimmering Skies, where you may return a character, whenever this character quests, you may gain lore equal to the lore of chosen character of yours. You can return that character back to your hand. So if you have Maribel out questing for 5, you play Camilo, then you can get 5 lore on that interaction. And then Louisa, just for simply a lot of lore, a lot of strength, a lot of willpower taking place. We got I Find Them, I Flatten Them, which is banishing all items, and that being it kind of for the Encanto deck that I've schemed together. But last minute, I switched gears a little bit. I might run this one instead. So for the second themed deck, we actually have a Princess and the Frog themed deck where we actually, I believe, run every color except for Ruby. We got Steel, Amber, Sapphire, Amethyst, and Emerald as well. This is actually quite cool because I'm such a big fan of Friends on the Other Side. I love this card, so any excuse I can find to play it, I want it. But this is basically a little bit more structured in a sense than, say, the Encanto theme deck, because we actually have a few lines here that we can play. So for the 1-drops, we just have 4, which is the downside being the Tiana Diligent Waitress, a 1/3. We get into Prince Naveen, which this is not going to be the last Prince Naveen we see here, a 2/3 cresting for 1. Playing Dr. Facilier, which it's so fun to see this card again because this is one of the first cards I ever played with. So Dr. Facilier, Challenger 2, hitting for nothing unless you're challenging, 4 willpower. And then we get into things like Prince Naveen, another shift line for the Prince Naveen we got inside Azurite Sea. And we also get the shift line here. So shift Prince Naveen into a bodyguard, shift 3, 2/6, questing for 2. So I love the fact that I have a fairly cheap shift line here. But then we get to break out some really interesting things with Tiana. So one thing that is probably likely to happen is a little bit of top decking if the hand's not right. So while this character is exerted, if I have no cards in my hand, opponents can't play actions. Got resist 1, questing for 2. But the one thing that's really cool about this one is the new Tiana we got inside Azurite Sea. Spicy pick, I'm only running 2 inside this deck, but this is going to be the Tiana where if a character of mine is challenged and Tiana is exerted, the challenging player gets -3 strength unless they pay 3 ink. So spicy take, it's cheap, it's a 3-cost card, kind of makes your opponent go, whoa, hold on a second, like we have to like actually pay ink here. So kind of cools the game down a little bit. I don't know how it's going to work out, but it's kind of fun to work with. James here is just purely for ramp. I'm a newly found Sapphire player, so whenever this character is banished, I can put this character into my Inkwell face down and exerted. He's going to sit there and sing Friends from the Other Side and quest for 2 until he's eventually banished. So uninkable, but is what it is. Kind of an interesting pick is Eudora here. So a 1/9, which that's a lot of willpower for a 5-drop character questing for 2. And we also get into one of my favorite cards that I played in the very beginning in Rise of the Floodborn and the first chapter, Ray being evasive. I think evasive is going to be very difficult to handle inside this format. So questing for 3 with evasive. Tiana questing for 3, hitting for 5 strength, which is crazy. But more importantly is the Dr. Facilier shift line that I'm running here as well. So I'm running 2 other Dr. Faciliers that I hopefully can shift onto those Dr. Faciliers. And the Into the Shadows ability makes this really interesting, where whenever one of my characters is banished in a challenge, I can actually return that card back to my hand. So I have a little bit more of a strategy around this deck than I have with the Encanto deck. I think there's a little bit more to this one. I got a Prince Naveen shift line. I got a Dr. Facilier shift line. Playing 2 Gumbo Pots just to keep some characters alive here. But one card I'm excited to see how this runs is going to be Tiana's Palace. A 3-drop uninkable, 8 willpower, 1 passive lore. Characters can't be challenged while here. So I'm really excited to see how this plays out. I'm probably going to run with this one I might run 64 cards. I might play Fortisphere just to give me that card draw and a little bit more on the 1-drop inkable count. But I'm really excited to see how this deck runs here. But this is just a little overview on our themed night that's already taken place probably by the time you're watching this video. So just really excited that we were able to do something a little bit different while we're waiting for a set that I'm very excited for, being Archazia's Island here. So let me know in the comments below if you've ever played themed decks with your friends or family or at your local game shop. And if you have any questions around maybe the rules of themed deck nights, I'm sure there's probably other resources out there, but this is just how we handled it. We're happy to kind of give our insight as to how we handled some of these franchise questions here. So, but good luck in your upcoming drafts for Archazia's Island. Let me know if you end up doing something like this, either with friends or family at home or at your game shop. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all inside another Lorcana video very soon.